Simone, I'm excited to be here with you today. Today, we are going to be discussing the Quiverfull movement and what happened to them. Because I was noticing at the recent pro-natalist convention, we had lots of conservative religious people come.
Yeah.
Yes, it was about 2/3 of the people there. As I said, it's about 1/3 just tech bros, 1/3 just religion bros, 1/3 tech and religion bros. And so what there wasn't a lot of was evangelicals. And especially what there noticeably wasn't a lot of was Quiverfull. And if you are unfamiliar with the Quiverfull movement, I will give you a brief background. The movement, primarily based in the United States with some spread in the UK, emerged in the late 20th century as a response to feminism and modern birth control. It derives its name and philosophy from Plasm 127, 3 through 5, which compares children to arrows in the hand of a warrior, symbolizing divine blessings and strength through procreation. And it also says the children of your youth, implementing in that line that you should have kids while you're still young.
Which is one of the key things now is how do we get people in their 20s to start having kids again? So you think, this is so promising. This is perfect. Okay, great start.
Yeah, basically it argues, and I actually find it to be a really important passage in the Bible. It says that, the children you have in your youth are like the arrows in your quiver for your adulthood. Because what it's basically telling you is that while you're young, you should fill your arrow with quivers so that when you go to war, you have the bow. But it talks about having kids as a preparatory thing for a full life rather than a capstone event, which is actually a really powerful way to see having children.
Yes.
Anyway, adherents self-identify as Quiverfull or full quiver or QF Christians, eschew all forms of contraception, including natural family planning and sterilization, viewing family size as solely determined by God. This is the Jesus wheel people.
Okay. First place I'm seeing cracks here.
Yeah, note that this might be why they don't have many kids anymore, because biological fertility has been falling, and you really need to plan on kids. When Catherine Pakalak, she was on our show, she did children. She did a big thing where she interviewed 50 people who had over 5 kids. Only one of them used this method. So it is very rare to use this among large families. This natalistic approach is part of a broader conservative Christian pushback against secular trends, aiming for demographic growth to influence culture and politics. Early influences include works like A Full Quiver Family Planning and The Lordship of Christ by Rick and Jan Hess, which framed large families as the fulfillment of divine command. The movement gained traction in the 1980s and 90s, aligning with other conservative ideologies like Christian patriarchy, which emphasized male headship and female submission. Now, before we go further with this, that's basically the gist of what the movement was. It was the spooky pro-natalists that I knew of growing up. Like if somebody had said, what is the pro-natalist movement? I would have said Quiverfull when I grew up in the 90s.
100%.
But they've basically gone extinct. As we showed in a recent episode, pro-natalism significantly outcompetes Quiverfull as something like a search term these days. And so the question is, what happened to them? Why aren't they going to like natalist conferences? Why aren't they in talks with, with all of the political talk about natalism these days and JD Vance in office? Why isn't there some Quiverfull, thinker or talker stepping up and catching news? Because there isn't. And it's uniquely interesting because they were having lots of kids. And so this is important to us. It shows that just having lots of kids isn't enough and can even lead to the extinction of your movement. And so this is something that we have to look out for. I mean, we are a Christian high fertility movement, right? So how do we pass that on intergenerationally when they failed to do this?
Yeah.
So let's explore the movement and let's explore how it fell apart and how we can avoid that. The movement reached peak visibility during the 2000s and 2010s, largely due to media exposure. Families like the Duggars, featured on the reality show 19 Kids and Counting, became public faces that they did not explicitly identify as Quiverfull. Their lifestyle was 19 children, mirrored the movement's ideals, bringing it into mainstream awareness. At this time, estimates suggest that around 10,000 adherents, with a focus on large families, often 6 to 12 children, as a strategy for demographic shift and cultural influence. And note that here, they were not that big, 10,000 movements at their peak, right? And I think that and the evangelicals more broadly sort of were overplayed by the media as a much larger movement than they ever really were. This period saw the movement's doctrine, such as rejecting birth control and emphasizing homeschooling to maintain indoctrination, became widely discussed. However, the movement faced significant controversies that likely contributed to its decline in prominence. Reports of spiritual abuse, dehumanizing practices, and patriarchal control emerged, with former members like Vicky Garrison, a turned activist, highlighting the darker side. The Grudge article from 2023 noticed the movement's association with Christian patriarchy, where wives were expected to be subservient and fathers controlled all aspects of family life, making it harder for members to leave. Specific cases, such as women continuing pregnancies against medical advice, nearly dying, underscored the physical and emotional toll, as seen in examples like Garrison's seventh child. Critiques also focused on sustainability, with physical, emotional, and financial strains on families. The movement's vision for large families was seen as impractical in modern contexts, and political strategy aiming for influence through demographic growth was questioned for limited electoral impact outside of conservative communities. These controversies, amplified by media and former members' testimonies, likely eroded its broader appeal. So what are your thoughts so far?
Well, I think the really strong thing is this message of starting in your 20s and kids are an asset. The let Jesus take the wheel, no family planning, not even natural family planning approach is insane. And what really bothers me about the man has to be the leader approach is that only works when you have an exceptional man. Yeah, like I'm super cool with 100% being subservient to you, because you are the most exceptional man I've ever discovered in the entire history of humanity. Like Alexander the Great, nope, sorry. Napoleon, no, I don't think so. You, yeah, sure, absolutely, 100%. So I mean,
I have a similar opinion of myself.
Works. You have to have a sword and shield relationship. You have to have a relationship in which people have domains of ownership, in which both women and men are seen as bringing respect to the table. And I think we're a community, maybe even externally, has a little bit more of an ability to be like, you need to work on yourself. We're putting the other partner in charge right now because you're a hot mess. And that, I don't know, it just feels like there's too much room for things to go out of control and for abusive dynamics to form. What are your thoughts?
Well, I mean, I even with everything that you think of me, and even with you saying, you have the final shot on everything, I don't treat that in the way like a Duggar would treat that, right? Like, we still live in a way that most people would see as highly gender egalitarian. And I think this is part of the problem that people relate to this, is that yes, women on average want to be the submissive partner in a relationship, and often relationships work better when a male takes the lead or dominant role. But part of that dominant role is not pushing the other person around, forcing them to do things they don't want to do.
Yeah, how did one of our listeners put it really well? Or it's that mother of seven who I respect so much, you know who you are, mentioned that dominance, real dominance, especially like in these relationships, never shows up as a man putting a woman down or pulling rank. It is just natural dominance. It's natural leadership. If you have to put a woman down or tell her to do something or order her around or act dominant, like performatively, you have already lost. You are showing that you do not have dominance.
And to force someone to do something like that, you're absolutely right. That's a sign that they don't want to follow what you have to say, just based on what you have to say.
Yeah, I think real husband dominance manifests in a wife going out of her way to try to anticipate his needs and the needs of the family without ever being asked, because she understands her role. She understands what he brings to the table. She understands his vision. And if a man doesn't communicate his vision, if he doesn't do these things, she will not anticipate his needs. She will not have the drive to act on them, or she won't think that his vision is legitimate, and she won't act on it because there's very little motivation when you feel a lot of cognitive dissonance. So I think that's a big problem, because I feel like that's not in ideal Quiverfull relationships. That probably happens, but I just don't, like, welcome to the world. No relationship except for ours, if you ask me, is ideal.
Yeah, well, and I think it's like our daughters growing up, they're not going to feel like they're in a household where a man has all the power and a woman can't. Like,
but
often...
I think also in very extreme power dynamic relationships, or at least like, when a man really leads some things, like part of what leadership means is delegating a huge swaths of influence to other people. Yeah. And I think in many households where you see divisions of labor, you will see like, whoa, like I control all the finances. I control like a lot of things, and you control a lot of things. And they'll see that there's control on both ends. And if someone's micromanaging, they're not actually being a good leader. And I think that's also where you see the ordering around and this perception of dominance that is performative and not real.
It's almost like they're LARPing being a man. They heard this concept of being a man, and they like, I understand that all of the power that I have over you is a gift from you to me, and one that can be revoked. It is power I have not due to some divine right, but due to the fact that you trust me enough, and if you stop trusting my decision making, I'm not going to have that power anymore. And that's the way I relate to it.
And well, that's how it's been for every natural leader throughout history. Every king, every general understands that if he doesn't in any single moment manage to be naturally dominant, his people will not follow. There will be a rebellion, there will be mutiny, there will be whatever, right? Like captains on ships don't stay captains because their title is captain. Captains on ships stay captain because they are the best leader for the ship. Like that changes. And this is why you have desertion. This is why you have mutinies. This is why you have revolutions.
Yeah, no, I agree 100%. And I think, I just agree. And I think that that's going to keep a lot more people in our cultural tradition than would stay in their tradition. If you have a cultural tradition where you would just strictly be better off, like if I'm born a woman leaving, of course you're going to bleed women, and then you're going to bleed men who think that the tradition's unfair. And we've been seeing this more recently. It used to be that women stayed with conservative traditions at a higher rate than men, but recently the trend has reversed and women have started leaving at a higher rate. So, for example, now Mormonism is a majority male religion, which never used to be the case.
Crazy. Yeah. All the friends that we knew who even converted in were women because they really bought the wholesome family lifestyle thing.
We know a lot of women who've converted out too.
That's true. That's true. Yeah, because of the feminist issues. Yeah, and they're like, wait a second, this is super not okay with me.
This is deeply unfair. Like, from their perspective. Anyway, I'll keep going here. The decline seems driven by multiple factors. The backlash from abuse scandals, such as those within the Duggar family, which received more attention post-2015, the unsustainable demands on adherence, highlighted by critiques of health and autonomy, and a cultural shift away from such extreme natalism in broader society. Well, I don't know. I guess, birth rates have fallen. It's become less cool. While not extinct, its influence is likely reduced with a smaller, more insular community compared to its earlier ambitions of demographic and cultural dominance. While specific 2025 deconversion rates for Quiverfull children are not available, anecdotal evidence suggests, for example, what it was like to grow up in Quiverfull Cosmopolitan features Hannah Edgar, raised in the movement, who is now completely in a new life, implying deconversion. A Reddit post in our deconstruction of large Quiverfull families, and I read a lot about on this thread, discusses large families and deconversion, though it's anecdotal. The lack of numerical data is a gap, but a pattern exists, especially given controversies like abuse within the Duggar family, as mentioned in the Untold Truths of Quiverfull Christianity, Grunge, supports the idea of higher deconversion. So I was like, okay, let's go to that family that had 19, the Duggars. How many of their kids stayed in both the religion and its high fertility goal? 11% of their children did.
Oh, like what's the
2 of the 19? Yeah.
That's bad.
But it's not as bad as you think, because what we actually find is if you then say, okay, let's just look at the older ones, because some are like 16, 18, 19, those don't count, right? Yeah. So let's only look at the 12 who are over 25 right now. Only 2 of those 12 don't have children. And of the other 10, all of them have over 2 children, but 1. There are a few that are pregnant with their third, but yeah, so they are dramatically higher fertility than normal.
Interesting. Just anecdotally, every time I hear some interview with someone who deconverted and had a really large religious family. It was a Quiverfull family, not Mormon, not. Oh, I guess there's 8 passengers, so there's that one.
Well, 8 Passengers was another really large Christian family that got famous, and her kids
yeah, but they were
like
Mormon,
systematically
so
deconverting.
Yeah. I guess are some Mormons Quiverfulls? I guess you should ask, like, how religiously siloed is this concept of, because it's a biblical line. You don't have to be like a whatever.
I imagine you can be any movement. Yeah, it's like whatever. But I would count her as part of that larger movement. You know, very strict parenting, very very different parenting style than our parenting as well. Like, we are known as being strict because we use like light corporal discipline with our kids, which is super taboo these days. But this is not like what Quiverfull families do, where they do like very serious spankings and stuff like that.
Yeah, or like I think it overlaps with that book that guides mothers to like teach their baby to stay on a small blanket and like hurt them a little bit.
Yes, actually, that was one of the controversies we're going to be talking about.
Okay, yeah. So there's also just
Explain
this like
how it works.
Well, they're just trying to use basic conditioning to stop
how
a baby.
blanket training works.
Right. So you put your infant on a like square blanket on the ground, and it doesn't have any fence or walls or anything. And then every time they go towards the edge of it, you like flick their wrist or do something that hurts them a little bit. So they associate going off the blanket with pain. And eventually they will just stay on the blanket and not go off of it. And that is convenient, especially for mothers of larger families, because they can just put the blanket down anywhere and expect that their kid is going to stay on it. And that's dead. I don't know. There's just something like deeply dystopian and really sad about that to me. Like, you're just like a broken.
I don't know. Our kids lack that for going off beds.
But, yeah, no, our kids, yeah, like that. Even when like they have a real scare and like wanna like they just desperately want to fall off surfaces, and we are constantly being like, this is a cliff. Do not. I understand your point here, but our corporal punishment is more like, you are about to severely hurt yourself or put yourself in danger or one of your siblings in danger. You got to knock this off. Like, you're not listening to my words. This is different. It is, I'm going to break your will. I'm going to make you a compliant, domesticated human. And
yes, you're right. The difference is that they are trying to domesticate their children, and we're trying to make our children maximally fierce. It's a completely different way of relating to them.
It's very like, backward versus Puritan, honestly. The Puritan way of raising kids, and we like some things about it, like this idea of having kids like confront their mortality and all that, like some harsh elements of Puritan upbringing historically.
They had them look at corpses and stuff and be like,
stare into graves until they cried. Like, I get that. Like, except that when we do that with our children, they just don't get it, or they do, but they don't care, I guess.
I think you're absolutely right, where it is moving away from strictness for the sake of strictness. I'd almost say like it's like 2 dogs. Like, one dog you're trying to force to follow every order that's ever given to it,
right?
And the other dog you're training to fight other dogs. Like,
okay,
we're training our dogs the way you would train a pit bull. You want to just be absolutely unhinged and go. But to a pit bull, every toddler and a small dog is just another snack. That is how pit bulls see the world. You got to see our video on the 1 ethical genocide. I do think we should get rid of pit bulls.
Yeah, I agree with you.
But it's just like a different way of relating to raising a thing. Like, is the boundaries that you are placing on them to make them stronger? Is it to get them to be tougher? Or is it because you're trying to get them to follow a very constrained trajectory? And with us, now, does this mean that they have a higher chance of leaving the family? Yes, because you're trying to make them like have will and want to leave the family. But in a way, because of that, it also brings them back to the family, not through like punishment or fear or whatever, but through pride, and that I'm a Collins. And this is what I was always taught growing up. You are a Collins, and Collinses are better than other people. It's just very clear. It's like, this is what's expected of you because you're Collins. And I was like, well, other people don't do that. And they go, well, other people aren't Collinses. And I remember being like, oh yeah, like I have more rules of this type, this like expected in my personal behavior, because I'm better than other people. And I think that I don't know if my opinion of myself has changed much as time has gone on. But I think
confirmed
that kids would relate the same way. Is that if you do this right, they're going to be like, yeah, but I'm the best, right? Why would I leave a family when the family is super awesome? And especially if I like my siblings. And that was something that was noted in the thread over and over again when people were complaining about their large families. They would complain about stuff where, like, obviously some therapist or urban monoculture person had gotten their hooks in them. And that's weird, but they always said that they really appreciate all their siblings. And they wouldn't want any of them not to exist, and that's the thing that was the most important to them and exciting about growing up that way. And so you really don't get this, and I'd say this is true of the large families I know. I do not see this pushback of like, oh, I wish my siblings didn't exist. It's just the totalitarian way that the religion was communicated to them is what causes them to split off. And I think within religions that have lower deconversion rates, like Judaism, like Orthodox Judaism, it is the factions that are either isolated from the rest of the world. Those have very low deconversion rates. Like they isolate them educationally and everything like that. So they can't easily get a job in the outside world, which is not great. I wouldn't do that.
Yeah.
Or the ones that are just like strict in their belief system, but not in like authoritarianly pushing it on children through things like punishment. But let's get into some of the any thoughts before I go further?
No, go further.
All right, let's get into some of the controversies. So I'm going to start with all the controversies that don't involve Josh, because that's a whole different scenario. So this was a controversy brought up in the docuseries Shiny Happy People, where one daughter who also wrote a book about this and complained a lot, she's like, Jill, unpaid 7.5 years of labor. This isn't helping with raising the other kids. This is in being on air. But she mostly just complained about being on TV a lot and not liking TV at her wedding and at other important events. And I'm like, fine, but it doesn't really have anything to do with you being in a large family.
It has to do with their father exploiting them, which that's pretty clear from all the stuff that happened.
And then another big backlash, and this caused TLC's removal of the show, apparently, or was part of it, was Derek Dillard's quote-unquote homophobic tweets in 2017, where what did he say? He called transgenderism a myth.
Okay. So stupid. Like if you're gonna have like a transphobic tweet, that's a pretty stupid transphobic tweet.
It calls him to be removed from counting on family attention. Yeah, I don't.
It's not a
what like that's mainstream these days. Yeah, he came too early, right? You know, now we've got the Tavistock report. Now we've got, you know, everything that's going on since the post-election vibe shift where everyone's like, okay, yeah, it's probably a culture-bound illness and leads to a lot of unaliving attempts that don't exist in any other culture on Earth. No other culture on Earth. I mentioned this before. I'll mention it every chance I get. No other culture on Earth and no other time period on Earth. While you see gay people everywhere throughout history and cultures, trans people are completely absent except for modern context. And note here, I'm not talking about gender fluidity. Gender fluidity exists all over history, but being obsessed with the gender that other people see you as to the point where you would want to kill yourself because they don't see you as the gender you see yourself, this is not a phenomenon anywhere else in human history. And obviously it's a very mentally taxing phenomenon that we would prefer didn't exist and proliferate. So he's completely right about this. Next here, you have Tudor's marriage to sex offender. This is Tabitha Page. So Tudor married convicted sexual assault offender. Duggar's through engagement party. Significant backlash, question family values, whatever. The Josh is the big one, and it's the one that I'm more worried about and want to learn from. The most prominent scandals on Josh Duggar, the eldest child. In Touch Weekly published a 2006 police report revealing Josh as a teenager molested 5 underage girls, including 4 sisters, Jill, Jessa, Jinga, and Jana. Well, they really like those J's, with offenses occurring between 2002 and 2003, when he was 14 to 15. The report, later confirmed by People, detailed groping while victims slept, confessed to parents, and received counseling. But the revelation led to TLC, or at least was part of it, canceling 19 Kids and Counting on June 16th, 2015, as noted in Josh Duggar's Wikipedia. This fallout was named one of the 10 big scandals of 2015 by USA Today, and the Washington Post listed Josh as one of the most hated people online that year. The same year, on August 19th, 2015, Gawker reported Josh had active accounts on Ashley Madison. This is when the leak happened, I guess. A website for extramarital affairs confirmed by People, leading to his public apology on the family website, admitting a pornography addiction and cheating on his wife, Anna. He checked into a faith-based rehab program centered in Rockford, Illinois on August 2015. As per People, victims Jill and Jana came forward in 2015, interviewed on Kelly File with Megyn Kelly.
While he creepily watched behind the camera, by the way.
What?
He was there on set. Like, they were coerced into doing that. Just horrible. The whole thing was horrible. And this is, I mean, I don't care what your arousal problems might be, or like what inconvenient things turn you on. You're a garbage person if you do these things. Like, he just over and over again chose to hurt people and do things to people without their consent. He's just a garbage person. And the fact
that we'll see more about this, but continue.
The fact that, well, a Quiverfull family that raises someone like that is not creating a culture that is good. It is not imparting fitness at all. Failure. Drop it. They lost.
I disagree. I'm going to push back a little here. They had 19 kids. Okay.
Yeah. And he was their first.
True. Yeah. You get bad apples with, I'm just like, I look at this and I think that you and this perception you have that if we raise our kids right, they won't do this is inaccurate. I think that we have to be constantly vigilant, even if we're good parents.
100%.
In terms of how we train them to report and talk to us about things, which apparently wasn't happening effectively in this
family. But also what you do when problems are reported, because this was reported multiple times.
And he went to counseling after it was reported, but I think that it was reported by him and not by things like his sisters and stuff like this. And I think you need a system where the entire family is like on watch or surveillance.
I think this was also reported by girls from other people's families. It wasn't just him coming forward. I don't think this was him coming forward.
Well, I mean, I look at things he's doing when he's 14 and 15, and this requires, I mean, I actually think that this is why it's good to have all the kids sleep in the same room, or the same room by gender at least, because it's much easier to...
Safety in numbers?
Yeah, safety numbers. One of the other kids can report on the kid who's doing the wrong thing, and every kid knows that every other kid is watching.
Yeah, they snitch on each other.
They would absolutely snitch on each other. And I think that that's a powerful way you can prevent creepy kids from being creepy to other kids, right?
Fair.
And yeah, I see how something like this could happen if like the oldest kid is the problem as well, because then you have to worry about reprisals and stuff like that, which is why maybe it matters that you focus on the oldest kid being more moral, or focus a lot on moral teachings with the older kid. We're fortunate in that our oldest kid is very obsessed with rules.
Yeah.
He won't let us continue. Like, if I'm driving and a naughty word is said on a show that I'm watching or on a song, he goes, "That's a bad show. You got to turn it off. You gotta play something else." He will not let me watch things that have curse words in them, which I absolutely love. He won't have it.
I love it.
Which is why one of the reasons we're trying to remove curse words from this show, which I'm doing more of,
yes,
even bleeping them out when they're in the little clips. So I don't, but we don't know what he's going to be like when he goes through puberty. It's worth really working on that with the oldest kids to ensure that we set a good sort of direction. Yeah. And what we've seen with other kids is, if you look at like the 8 passengers situation, the older kids are the ones who basically set up a deconversion pipeline for the younger kids.
Yeah.
And so, but we'll get into more of this. So in April 2021, you might not know about this, Josh faced another scandal when he was arrested on April 29th for receiving and possessing child pornography with material from May 2019 depicting abuse of children under 12 as detailed by People. He pleaded guilty, facing up to 20 years and $250,000 in fines, found guilty in 2021, blah, 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 to 12 years in prison with 20 years under supervision, prohibited from unsupervised contact with minors, and fines of $50,100 per People. Family reactions varied, with Michelle and Anna supporting him, while his cousin Amy Duggar King opposed, calling the family delusional in an ex-post, urging Anna to divorce, as noted in People. Now, so I asked, how did they teach sex ed to their children? Because it's like, what could have led to this behavior, right? And I actually think a lot of the behavior is downstream of this. The Duggar family, well known for their conservative Christian beliefs and featured on a reality TV show, provided limited sex education, primarily emphasizing abstinence until marriage. It seems likely that men received a brief talk and a Christian-themed book before marriage, while women were given little to no formal education, accepting guidance from their husbands. Their homeschooling curriculum, based on the Advanced Training Institute, ATI program, avoided discussion of sex, creating a taboo and spreading misinformation, with strict modesty rules and limited physical contact before marriage. That's what I think a lot of this comes down from. And I think a lot of the deconversions come down from this. If you teach somebody, as I've always said, like, engaging with pornography makes you a bad person, and they're a young man, as we know, basically all young men, except those in the most extreme religious conditions. Like, there's a famous case where they tried to do a study and they wanted to find men who had never used porn before as like a control in the study, and they had to abandon it because they couldn't find enough men in that category. And I think a man has to be pretty sexually atypical to fall into that category. And that being the case, it means that if you teach them, well, you're sinful and this is really horrible, if you're engaging in this stuff, especially with the internet as it is these days, then you just have all of them thinking that about themselves, which makes them think, well, then why not just leave?
Mm-hmm. Well, either you stay and you're secretly a monster, or you leave.
Yeah, and then it's like, well, then what's the additional bad to molestation?
Yeah. Yikes. Not
when
good.
you tell someone they're a monster for doing this is also why we push back against things like Louise Perry's. While we like her as a person and as an influencer, her idea that women are only into choking because men have like deluded them, and women are only into like being put in positions of, let's put masochistic submission because of men liking this stuff. That's not,
the data doesn't support it.
Untrue. Yeah. This is driven by women. Women prefer this more than men prefer doing it. Men did not make 50 Shades of Grey a bestseller, and women were not buying it to show off to men.
Yeah.
What we see is if you are honest about this stuff and you tell your daughters, hey, it's normal to be into this stuff. It's normal to be into, what was the whole vampire phenomenon? It was about having guys who, come on, it's normal to be into this as a woman. Don't think that you're sinful. Don't think that you're a deviant. Just
don't think that just because it turns you on, you want it either. Like, yeah, that's another really important point here. Just because something turns you on doesn't mean you morally condone it, or that you want it to happen, or that it would be good if it happened. So that's also, yeah,
and I think that when we break away from this Duggar mindset around something like pornography or the Louise Perry mindset, you don't have kids feel ashamed about things that are totally normal. And through that, there's less of an idea of like, oh, I don't like being in this family, or oh, I'm sort of scared to be in this environment or this household because I know that I'm not living up to the standards that I assume everyone else is living up to.
Right.
When in reality, very few people actually live up to these standards. Mm-hmm. And then because you're already breaking one moral norm, it's like, well, I'm already a horrible person. And then you begin to contextualize this into your identity. And I think that what people need to realize, one of the things that we always point out, and you can look at our Catholics About to Go Extinct episode, I talk about low fertility rates and high deconversion rates among some other Christian movements. And I think in these movements, there's this perception that, well, how quickly could you really disappear as a movement that at least attempts to be high fertility and attempts to espouse high fertility values? And I think the Duggar show you how quickly. Fast. The Quiverfull movement shows you how quickly. Fast. A generation.
Yeah.
That's how fast. Definitely like 2 generations.
Yeah. I'm also looking at Google Trends interest over time for Quiverfull, not as a search term, but as like the broader religious concept. Mm-hmm. Sharing this with you, just so you have it. It had spikes every now and then. It probably mostly due to media stuff. And the most recent spike was in 2022, May, and it was one of the smaller spikes that has ever taken place. So it is clearly on the downfall. It appears to be in its death throes.
Yeah. Well, and this is why I think like authoritarian religious structures are just very bad at working in a modern context.
Yeah.
And if that's the way you're relating your
Oh.
religion to kids, they will leave it and they will help your other kids leave it.
Interestingly, when you compare Quiverfull to natalism, Quiverfull religious concept, natalism belief, the 2004 to present total search volume for Quiverfull is much larger. Like it definitely was a way bigger concept than pronatalism in the past. But basically ever since only 2023, when you and I started really pushing for it, natalism has clearly started to take over. Yeah, very interesting. Whereas Quiverfull has kind of died out. Quiverfull had much bigger spikes. I think that's probably mostly because of the Duggars, though. Sure.
Well, and media, and you know, I haven't molested a kid, so
yeah, let's keep it that way. You slapped kids though, and I'm sure that helped with overall awareness. So there we go.
Yeah, right.
Whatever it takes. Bopgate was a boom.
Bopgate. I just got to get a slapping machine. We'll get that with the documentary when it comes out.
Slapping machine. We can have slap competitions now that I know it's a sport. Kids can
I love you.
Practice on each other.
All right, have a great day, Simone. We'll go to the next episode.
I love you. You have the graphs, by the way. Okay, I just learned about an entirely new sport. There are professional large stadiums filled with viewing this sport.
Okay.
I didn't know it existed, and I would watch this, maybe. I am actually tempted to go watch the recorded versions of this. Can you guess what it is? Do you need a hint?
That you would watch it. Okay, what would you watch? Yeah, I need a hint. I have nothing other than that it's a sport you didn't know about. Sport. Oh, the Medieval Knights one.
No.
Oh, well, the Medieval Knights one looks pretty cool.
I've not heard of that. So that's like actual jousting? Or
no, like they dress up as knights and do like sword combat. It looks pretty brutal.
Okay, so like in The Knight's Tale, when they did in the ring and they were doing sword combat.
Yeah.
That kind of, okay. Nope, that's not it, but I didn't know that was the thing, so that's awesome. Thank you for giving me one.
Yeah, so, well, I don't know. Go on.
Okay, think of a game show where a man was, an Indian man was quite disturbed by a woman's action.
Oh, it's a slapping game?
Yes, slapping competitions. And they've like slow cams, and you get points taken off if you flinch. And it's both men and women. They have, heavyweight, lightweight categories, etc. They're medical professionals on staff. There's knockouts. People break their wrists. People break their noses. And you can see like this slow-mo of the slap hitting them. And like the hand like reverberates as though it is rubber. The face, of course, ripples. And interestingly, the person I was watching comment on it for a little bit, who taught me about this, notice that women could take the slaps better than men. Women seem to flinch a lot less. And looking at her footage, it was really impressive. The men were flinching, and obviously the men are a lot stronger, so I get it. But
Simone, this is why these women have a lot more training than the men. I mean,
shut up!
Without
you terrible person.
You could just go up there, have no problem at all. You are a professional at getting slapped. Just so people know, I don't slap my wife.
Actually, our kids would be amazing at it. Because remember in front of that journalist, we did like, we had like, and they didn't flinch at all. They would have gotten points in a slap competition for their utter lack of flinching, which is
okay.
Points.
Also, Simone, I have to convince you Ixion Labs is actually the perfect name for the studio.
Remind me who the Ix are in Dune.
So the Ix are known for, so there's two factions that produce a lot of technology in Dune.
There's the
One is the Tleilaxu that you don't really like. So they do the biological engineering technology.
Yeah.
The Ix are known for technology that skirts the Butlerian Jihad rules.
So they're the ones that are they the ones that are the personal computers of the wealthy people?
No.
Those are, what are they called?
Make real computers. Like they're very, if the Tleilaxu's thing is sort of like being weird and creepy and whatever, like the Ix are known as being like overly clean. Like everything in their civilization looks like an Apple store. They have a republic, unlike the other governments in the empire, which are all like imperial or whatever.
Yeah.
And they create AI technology that is like clearly illegal. So like if you have on like a headset that like scans the environment and is like picking out things, like one
AR.
of those was made by the Ix. So they do technology like that, super advanced, super clean technology, hologram projectors, stuff like that.
Okay. So I like it, except for the fact that when pronounced out loud, it sounds like ick. And ick is even come back. Like there's the new parlance of giving me the ick. And it is not, I think, something we would want as a brand name.
I don't, it does not, you didn't like Mundo, Mundo used with other things because you saw it as negative. But when I hear, I think like Necronomus Mundo or whatever, you know.
I think telenovelas and Spanish TV. So, no.
No, if
not that I have anything against Spanish as a language. I just like, I don't think that's useful. We'll keep playing with it.
If Bruno likes Ix, I'm going to go with it because I like it so much.
Well, I respect Bruno, so I will defer to him. But
the other one we have is what is it? Sentient systems.
Sentient systems is good.
I don't like sentient systems that much. I was thinking about like me as a third party developing on a platform that was made by sentient systems. And I'm like, would I want to tell people that I like, that sounds a little like lame. I don't know. Like
more than Ixian?
Ixian is cool. Sentient systems sounds a little lame. And then if you shorten it, it becomes SS, which was side scrollers problems.
I grew up with the initials SS. Didn't realize that it was problematic until it was a little late. Speaking of names, maybe our audience can settle a score, although I've basically already overridden it because I've just declared bankruptcy on having a Dune-related middle name for our next son.
Our next kid is the first name, okay?
You don't, no. Take out the part where we give his first name because I need to set up all his like domains and stuff, and I don't want people camping on things.
Okay, we'll take out, but then it doesn't mean anything if you just have the second name, but whatever. Okay, you just want the second name.
So we are choosing a middle name for our fifth son, who also, we joke, is the Quiverfull because he's got a really great potential IQ based on his polygenic scores. It puts him in like the 99th percentile. So that's like, wow, he's amazing. And so I was joking we should give him the middle name of Atreides, but then Malcolm said, no, we should give him the middle name of Tleilaxu. And I think Atreides, it's honorable, it's stately, it's outside the normal moral constraint because it's gullible. Not as though Paul is a goodie all the time. He understands.
No, hold on. But Atreides is so basic. Tleilaxu, if you're going for nominative determinism, and all of our kids have gone nominative deterministic so far, you know, Tleilaxu is exactly the path we'd want them to go down.
Humanitarian crises, using people's bodies against their will? No,
they don't even have a will anymore. They remove their brains.
There are alleged characters who say that they were used for this purpose, meaning that they do have a brain.
No, that was
there is sentience
that the son did, where he went crazy and then he had them free all the time.
Isn't that still canon?
No, not in a meaningful, not to any real fan. Simone, it is the biocrafter species. That's what we want.
I do really want bioengineering to be a family thing, but the humanitarian crisis angle is just not.
There's no humanitarian crisis. It's whiners. It's Lisa Simpson who calls this a humanitarian crisis.
Also, Atreides just sounds like a great name. And you won't let me name any of our kids Artanis. So I need something that's like a cool 3-syllable kind of sci-fi A starting name. Give me something here. Right. Well, the audience can weigh in. Atreides or Tleilaxu as a middle name.
All right.
First, subscribe to our channel if this is fancy. Hola! Hola!
Is there anything else you want to say?
Subscribe first while I'm standing up. I'm not holding this. This is very fancy. Like and subscribe to the channel if that is really fancy. If you don't like and subscribe to the channel, well, you can still comment a like down below. Tell us what you think about this in the comment below in our video. Bye!